You wake up exhausted. Your body feels heavy. Your mind is foggy, like you've just returned from some distant dream you don't remember. You tell yourself, I just need more sleep. Maybe I'm burnt out. Maybe I'm just overwhelmed. But deep down in the quietest part of you, the part that's honest when no one else is listening, you know that's not the truth. You're not tired. You're not burnt out. You're bored. You're uninspired. You're unfulfilled. And the reason you feel so tired all the time is because you are spending your life on things that do not matter to you. There is a special kind of fatigue that doesn't come from overworking. It comes from living without purpose. You can rest your body, but if your soul is restless, no amount of sleep will help you. You feel drained not because you've done too much, but because you've done too little of what sets your soul on fire. Too many days spent scrolling, nodding, saying yes to things you don't believe in. Too many conversations that don't go anywhere. Too many hours doing what's expected instead of what's necessary. You weren't born to live like this. There is a war inside you, a war between the version of you that settles and the version that screams to be alive, to take the risk, to walk away, to speak the truth, to finally live like you're awake. But every time that voice rises, you silence it with another excuse, another distraction, another plan to start tomorrow. The truth is, you don't need more time. You need to stop wasting the time you already have. You don't need more motivation. You need more honesty, and you don't need to change your whole life today. But you do need to stop pretending this version of life is fine, because it's not, and your body knows it. That's why it feels like this. You're not tired, you're wasting your life, and your soul is tired of pretending otherwise. There is a kind of tiredness that no pillow, no nap, no weekend away can fix. It lingers behind your eyes. It follows you into every room. It weighs down your laughter, dulls your enthusiasm, and turns everything, even the things you used to love, into chores. This isn't the tiredness of a long day. It's the exhaustion of a long denial. You are not physically worn out. You are emotionally, spiritually, existentially depleted from pretending to care about a life that doesn't feel like yours anymore. You could sleep for 12 hours and still wake up with the same sinking emptiness in your chest, because this kind of exhaustion comes from misalignment, not effort. You are exhausted because you are pouring your energy into people, tasks, and routines that do not refill you. You wake up and go through the motions. You complete the checklist. You smile at the right time. You play the part. But the truth is, you're playing dead while your body still breathes. We live in a world that treats fatigue as a failure of stamina, not a failure of meaning. If you're tired, society tells you to drink more coffee, push harder, grind, outperform your burnout. But when your exhaustion comes from not being yourself, when your tiredness comes from abandoning your own values, your dreams, your intuition, no productivity hack can save you. Because the problem isn't your energy level, it's your direction. Imagine a man rowing a boat with all his might, arms aching, heart pounding, only to realize he's been heading away from shore this whole time. That's the exhaustion you feel, and it's why you're not recovering. Because rest isn't just a physical act, it's also a spiritual decision. You rest by giving yourself permission to stop betraying yourself. You rest by reclaiming your attention from things that drain you. You rest by finally admitting, I don't want this life. I want something else. But admitting that means confronting the years you've spent avoiding the truth. And so you tell yourself you're just tired, just overwhelmed, just in a weird phase. But this isn't a phase, it's a warning. and it will get louder the longer you ignore it. You think you need more energy, but what you really need is something worth waking up for. You need a reason to feel alive again, a reason that makes your feet want to hit the ground in the morning, a reason that feels like freedom when you speak it aloud. Until then, you can rest all you want, but you'll keep waking up tired because your soul knows. It always knows, and it's not going to let you sleep through the life you're meant to live. You think you're safe because things are familiar. You think you're doing okay because you have food, a roof, a steady routine. But there's something insidious about a life that looks good on the outside and feels like quiet despair on the inside. Comfort is the most dangerous addiction of them all because it doesn't ruin your life in an instant. It ruins it slowly, in silence. It gives you just enough not to leave, just enough to silence the voice that says you're meant for more, just enough to keep you numb. The most tragic lives aren't lived in failure or chaos. They're lived in comfortable stagnation, the slow death of staying exactly the same. Every day looks like the last. You wake up, go through the same rituals, speak the same tired sentences, think the same dull thoughts, then fall asleep to repeat it again. And you call it normal. You call it stable. You call it being responsible. But you're dying inside, not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly, secretly, in the pauses between your sighs, in the silence after you scroll past another person doing what you wish you had the courage to do. People think growth hurts, but what they forget is that comfort hurts too, just more slowly. It creeps into your joints. It turns your passions into passive regrets. It whispers lies like, you'll have time later. You're too tired right now. You've already come this far, why risk it? But comfort doesn't love you. It wants you still. It wants you obedient. It wants you to forget the fire you had when you were younger, the one that used to burn with visions of who you might become. Look around. How many dreams died not because of failure, but because they were put off in the name of comfort? How many people spend their entire lives waiting for the right moment to act, only to reach the end of their days realizing the right moment was every moment they were too afraid to use? And here's the truth no one wants to admit. If your life is too easy, you're probably not doing anything meaningful, because meaning requires effort. It requires discomfort. It requires showing up when it's inconvenient, scary, uncertain. It requires the kind of grit that most people avoid. But you've gotten good at avoiding. You call it being realistic. But deep down, you know it's fear. You've built a prison and called it peace. The truth is, your comfort zone is just a slow-motion coffin. It keeps you warm, keeps you safe, keeps you asleep. But if you don't wake up soon, you'll realize that nothing outside you is stopping you. It's just the illusion of safety that's keeping you stuck. And one day, you'll look back and see that everything you ever wanted was just one uncomfortable choice away. But you never made it, because you were tired, or so you thought. You're always busy. There's always something to do, a message to reply to, an errand to run, a notification to check, a goal to chase. And because you're always moving, you think you must be making progress. But motion is not meaning, and activity is not alignment. You're exhausted not because you're doing too much, but because you're doing the wrong things with a desperate sense of urgency. You've built a life filled with distractions dressed as obligations. You confuse being overwhelmed with being important. You run from one task to another, never stopping long enough to ask the most important question: why am I doing any of this? There's a certain kind of person this world rewards, the endlessly available, endlessly productive, endlessly performing machine. And you've learned to play that part well. You wake up and reach for your phone before you even remember who you are. You spend your day ticking boxes, updating schedules, answering emails that feel more like echoes than real communication. You chase deadlines as if they're lifelines. You mistake being needed for being alive. But deep down, you feel empty because you're not living, you're maintaining. You've mastered the art of staying busy enough to avoid your thoughts. You're constantly in motion, but motion without direction is just drifting. And you've been drifting so long, you forgot what it felt like to actually move towards something real. Ask yourself, when was the last time you did something that wasn't part of a plan? When was the last time you sat with silence and asked your heart what it needed? When was the last time you moved from meaning instead of momentum? You don't need more discipline. You need more clarity. Because without clarity, discipline just becomes a way to run faster in the wrong direction. You're not tired because you're doing too much. You're tired because you've buried your truth beneath 1,000 tasks. You've tricked yourself into thinking you're making progress because the days are full. But they're full of things that don't matter to you. And worst of all, you've convinced yourself this is normal, that this is what adult life is supposed to feel like. Numb, fast, efficient, detached. That being alive is supposed to feel like surviving, but it's not. And you know it. You were never meant to trade your soul for productivity. You were never meant to treat your purpose like an afterthought. You were never meant to confuse staying busy with being alive. Because one day you'll wake up and realize you were exhausted not from effort, but from avoidance. And everything you ever wanted was buried under the noise you chose to keep, instead of confronting the silence that would have set you free. You've spent your whole life trying to avoid pain. You call it wisdom. You call it caution. You call it protecting your peace. But let's be honest. Most of the time, you're not protecting peace. You're protecting comfort. You're dodging discomfort like it's a disease. You've become an expert at avoiding anything that feels sharp, unfamiliar, uncertain. But here's the brutal truth. Every time you dodge pain, you also dodge the person you could become. Pain is not the enemy, it's the invitation. It's the fire that forges character. It's the teacher you keep trying to silence. You think avoiding hard conversations, walking away from emotional risks, and saying I'm fine when you're not, keeps you safe. But all it does is keep you small. Every growth story starts with discomfort, and every person you admire has bled somewhere you're too afraid to go. The life you want, it lives on the other side of the very pain you're trying to outrun. It lives in the heartbreak you didn't want to feel, the truth you didn't want to speak, the identity you didn't want to shed, the fear you didn't want to confront. But instead of facing it, you keep saying, I'm just tired. I just need a break. I just need to wait for the right time. And while you wait, life doesn't. It moves forward without your permission. It gives your time to people who don't value it. It gives your energy to things that don't deserve it. And still you say, I don't want to feel this right now. But pain doesn't work on your schedule. It will keep returning. It will knock quietly at first, then louder, then harder, until it breaks the door down. Not to destroy you, but to wake you. You see, pain isn't there to punish you. It's there to show you what matters, to burn away the lies you've told yourself about who you need to be, to rip you out of your sleepwalking routine and scream, this isn't it. But you won't grow until you stop numbing, and you won't transform until you stop running, because everything you've been avoiding is everything you need to feel. Yes, it will hurt, but so does stagnation. So does betrayal of self. So does watching your life pass by in quiet, smiling denial. And the worst pain of all, regret. The pain of looking back and realizing you had the chance. You had the time, you had the gut feeling, and you ignored it because it was uncomfortable. But discomfort is the gatekeeper. It doesn't block the path. It is the path. And the more you resist it, the more exhausted you'll feel. Because deep down, you're not tired of trying. You're tired of hiding. You're tired of pretending this shallow version of life is all you deserve. So stop calling it burnout. Start calling it avoidance. And realize, pain is not a sign you're broken. It's a sign you're alive. You say you want change. You say you want meaning. You say you want to feel alive again. But if that were true, really true, you wouldn't be doing what you're doing. You wouldn't be clinging to routines that numb you. You wouldn't be holding on to people who drain you. You wouldn't be scrolling past the life you actually want while settling for the one that merely passes the time. The truth is painful. You want the life you're avoiding because the life you want requires things you're afraid to give up. It requires the death of your false identity, the one built on pleasing others, on fitting in, on being liked more than being real. It requires loss of comfort, loss of control, loss of all the stories you've told yourself about why you can't. The life you want is on the other side of radical honesty. And that terrifies you, because honesty would mean admitting you're not proud of who you've become. You're not excited about tomorrow. You're not tired because of the world. You're tired because of your choices. But honesty is also where freedom begins. It's the moment you finally say, I don't want this life anymore. Not because it's the worst, but because it's not mine. The life you want isn't some distant fantasy. It's been whispering to you for years. In the books you keep returning to, in the hobbies you stopped exploring, in the jobs you didn't apply for, in the version of yourself you see in dreams and feel in moments of stillness. But you keep pushing it away. You call it unrealistic. You say, now's not the time. You tell yourself you're too tired, but the truth is, you're not tired of trying. You're tired of pretending this isn't who you are. You're tired of dimming your light just to keep everyone else comfortable. Tired of staying small so no one feels threatened. Tired of being silent so no one gets offended. The life you want doesn't wait for permission. It waits for action. It waits for you to stop asking everyone else what you should do. It waits for you to stop making excuses wrapped in good intentions. And here's the wild part. You already know what you need to do. You've known for a long time. You're just afraid of what will happen if you finally say yes. If you walk away, if you go all in, if you bet on yourself. You're afraid that choosing yourself means losing everything else. But here's the twist. Choosing yourself is the only way you ever gain anything real. And the longer you avoid it, the more your life becomes a museum of almost. Almost tried, almost changed, almost became. Don't let that happen to you, because the life you want isn't hiding from you. You're hiding from it. And every moment you delay is another brick in the wall between who you are and who you were always meant to become. You keep saying you need more time, more clarity, more energy, more signs from the universe. But none of that is true. You don't need more time. You need more courage. Because time isn't your problem. Fear is. Fear of failing, fear of being seen trying, fear of succeeding and then not knowing who you are without the struggle. Fear of finally becoming the person you told yourself you could be, then realizing you wasted years avoiding it. You say you'll start when things are more certain, but nothing is ever certain. And while you're waiting, your life is being spent on fear disguised as logic. You tell yourself you're thinking things through, being responsible. But if we're being honest, you're stalling. You're waiting until it doesn't feel scary anymore. But the right thing almost always feels terrifying at first, because courage isn't confidence. Courage is doing it while your hands shake, while your voice cracks, while every voice in your head screams, what if this doesn't work? Courage is choosing to act not because you're ready, but because the pain of staying the same is finally louder than the fear of change. You already know what you want to do, what you need to say, what you need to walk away from, what you need to walk toward, but you're hoping someone else will go first, or that you'll wake up one day and it won't feel so heavy, that the decision will somehow make itself. It won't. And no one is coming to save you. This is the moment, not because it's perfect, but because you're still here, and time doesn't owe you anything. Every day you delay is another day borrowed from your future self, the one who has to live with the results of your hesitation. One day you'll look back and see it all clearly. You weren't waiting on timing. You weren't waiting on energy. You weren't waiting on opportunity. You were waiting on permission. Permission to try, to want more, to say no, to finally choose yourself. But permission doesn't come from the world. It comes from the part of you that knows this isn't who you want to be, knows you're meant for more than just existing, knows that fear never leaves, but neither does the call to rise above it. You don't need more time. You need to stop pretending that fear is a valid excuse. You need to remember that everything you admire in others was born from a moment just like this, a moment where someone was scared and did it anyway. That's what makes the difference. And the longer you wait for it to be easy, the more your life becomes a monument to hesitation. You keep saying you're burnt out, but what if you're not? What if you're just bored? Not bored of life, but bored of your own reflection, bored of who you've become, bored of the watered-down version of yourself that you've had to shrink into just to fit in, just to be liked, just to be okay. You're not exhausted from working too hard. You're exhausted from being someone you don't even recognize anymore. You built a life that was supposed to be safe, predictable, palatable. You did the things you were supposed to do. You followed the path that others said would bring stability. And now look at you. You have the routine, the responsibilities, the reputation. But where are you in all of it? You don't dream like you used to. You don't speak like you used to. You don't even feel like you used to. Not because you've matured, but because you've stopped believing that your real self is allowed to exist. You've replaced wonder with worry, curiosity with control, risk with routine. You've replaced living with managing, and now the world feels dull because your soul has been sedated. It's not burnout, it's spiritual boredom. It's the soul crying out for expansion after years of quiet suffocation. You miss the version of you that was willing to take a chance, the one that made art without needing a reason, the one that laughed too loud, loved too deeply, asked too many questions, the one that didn't apologize for existing. But somewhere along the way, that version became too much. So you toned it down, softened the edges, and now you wonder why you don't feel like yourself anymore. The truth is, you don't hate your life. You hate the cage you built around it. You hate how small you've made yourself to stay acceptable. You hate that you traded meaning for consistency. So no, you're not burnt out. You're just bored of performing, of pretending, of surviving in a life that doesn't make you feel alive. What you're aching for isn't rest, it's rebirth. It's the return of authenticity, of hunger, of chaos, of beauty, of the version of you who didn't edit themselves for anyone. And here's the hardest part. That version of you is still there, buried, bruised, but waiting. Waiting for you to stop settling. Waiting for you to stop calling it burnout when it's really morning. The morning of a self you abandoned to be accepted. And now finally it's time. Time to get bored of the excuses. Time to outgrow the numbness. Time to remember who you were before the world told you who to be. Because you're not tired. You're not broken. You're just too used to living as someone who isn't fully you. So here you are, still breathing, still waking up to another day in a life that feels more like an obligation than a gift. You keep saying you're tired, but maybe that's the only way you know how to describe the ache of disconnection, the quiet horror of watching your days blur together, of realizing that rest doesn't heal you anymore. Because it's not rest you need, it's revival. You don't need another nap. You need to start again, to walk away from the things that steal your fire, to stop settling for fine in a life that was meant to be profound, to stop mistaking numbness for peace. Because here's the final truth no one tells you. You will never feel fully alive until you start living a life that feels like yours. Not the one that impresses others, not the one that avoids risk, not the one that looks good in pictures, the one that burns inside you, the one that calls to you in quiet moments, the one that scares you, not because it's wrong, but because it's real. You're not tired, you're misaligned, out of sync with your values, out of step with your soul, out of love with your own reflection. But that can change, not with some massive transformation overnight, not with some external milestone. It starts small, it starts today. It starts by telling the truth, by saying, I don't want to live like this anymore, by daring to want more and not apologizing for it, by choosing discomfort over decay, purpose over approval, presence over performance. Let that be the beginning. Not the collapse, but the awakening. You don't need more time. You need to stop wasting the time you already have. Because one day your energy will run out for real. And when that day comes, let it not be said that you were tired. Let it be said that you lived.